The first Final Fantasy came out all the way back in 1987 on NES and is widely regarded as one of the most influential early console RPGs that played a major role in defining the genre. Today, Final Fantasy is one of the most successful gaming franchises of all time that features epic stories, memorable characters, and a really, really good soundtrack. In June 2023, the next installment in the franchise, Final Fantasy XVI, will be released for gamers all over the world to enjoy. But maybe you don't really know much about this latest chapter and are looking for a rundown of all the important details that you'll need to take into account before the game launches. Well friends, never fear, because Metasquad is here. Let's take a closer look at Final Fantasy XVI and provide you with everything you need to know about the game before it comes out. Here we go. Final Fantasy XVI is set in the realm of Valisthea, an entirely new world that is divided up into 6 kingdoms, namely the Grand Duchy of Rosaria, the Holy Empire of Sanbreque, the Kingdom of Waloed, the Dalmacian Republic, the Iron Kingdom, and the Crystalline Dominion. Players take on the role of Clive Rosfield, the firstborn son of the Archduke of Rosaria, whose task it is to safeguard his younger brother Joshua, who inherited the Phoenix's flames. As the first shield of Rosaria, Clive is able to wield part of the Phoenix's fire, but after a terrible tragedy befalls Clive at the hands of a mysterious dark icon, he begins his bitter journey down the road of revenge. Final Fantasy XVI's timeline basically follows Clive through 3 distinct periods of his life, namely his teens, 20s, and 30s. A central part of the game's narrative centers around the Mother Crystals, which are described as glittering mountains of crystal that tower over the realms around them. These giant crystals bless the inhabitants of Valisthea with ether, and from what it seems, the 6 kingdoms have all been established around and thrived off of these crystals for centuries. However, there is a fragile peace between the different kingdoms, and now thanks to the spread of something called the Blight, this peace is rapidly evaporating. In Final Fantasy XVI, summons are now referred to as icons. These are the most powerful and deadliest creatures in all of Valisthea. Each of them is bound within a single man or woman, otherwise known as a dominant, who is able to call upon their dread power at will. Anyone who is born a dominant cannot relinquish their power or deviate from their predestined path, no matter how awful it might be. Certain nations, like Clive's, treat dominants as royalty and have great admiration for their power. Unfortunately, other nations fear dominants and force them to serve as destructive weapons of war. In terms of magic, the majority of people in Valisthea rely on the Mother Crystals for their power. However, a small number of people are bearers and are able to cast magics at will. Like icons, a bearer's fate and position within society depends greatly on the kingdom into which they are born. I obviously don't know for sure, but I'd be willing to bet there's some kind of connection between icons and bearers, and that this overlap may play a critical role in the game's narrative. Again, this is just a theory, but that right there seems like a key plot point if I ever saw one. Other characters in Final Fantasy XVI include Jill Warwick, a ward of Rosaria who grew up alongside Clive and Joshua but has since become separated from them and carries the power of the icon Shiva within her. Then there's Benedicta Harmon, who is the dominant of the icon Garuda for the Kingdom of Waloed. She is described as cold and ruthless and has a talent for swordplay and subterfuge. Hugo Krupka of the Dalmacian Republic is the dominant of the icon Titan and is a man who has amassed a personal fortune due to his status and influence over the nation's armies and policies. Dion Lesage is the Crown Prince of Sanbreque and commander of the Dragoons. He is loved and respected by his people and is the dominant of the icon Bahamut, the King of Dragons. Barnabas Tharma is the dominant of the icon Odin, who rides atop a spectral horse and commands one of the largest armies and navies in all of Valisthea. Then there's Sidolphus Telemon, a soldier turned outlaw who is a man of science and the dominant of the icon Ramuh. Sid, as he's affectionately known, seeks to build a place where persecuted bearers and exploited dominants can live and die on their own terms. Lastly, there's Clive's trusty wolf Torgal, who was separated during the disaster that nearly brought an end to the Rosfield line. Thankfully, Torgal managed to reunite with Clive over a decade later and now loyally serves his master whenever required. Unlike the previous game, Final Fantasy XVI won't be open world. That may disappoint some of you, but the reason for this choice is to provide players with numerous enclosed areas that span many different environments so that they get a feeling of scale and that they are in fact part of a much larger world. I think this makes sense since there are 6 kingdoms in Valisthea, each of which is basically a world all its own. So this design consideration should make the overall experience feel more directed and story-driven. An open world approach just doesn't really make sense here and will likely detract from the game's seemingly dark and complex plot. As for combat, Final Fantasy XVI won't feature any turn-based elements and will instead involve real-time encounters that consist of devastating melee attacks and combos as well as magic. As is the case with most action RPGs, players will be able to decide which skills and swordplay techniques they want to learn and upgrade them as they see fit. And if for some reason you're not sure which skills to learn or upgrade, you can simply choose to have upgrades unlock automatically. Another interesting aspect when it comes to combat is the fact that Clive's wolf Torgal will also be there to help deal with enemies and keep his master safe from harm. In fact, Torgal is also able to heal Clive, so to say this canine companion is a serious asset would be an understatement. At certain points in the game, Clive will be joined by different stalwart allies who will assist him in battle. However, while Torgal can be commanded, these characters will simply attack enemies and fight as they choose. My hope is that this will be very useful, but I can imagine there may be one or two instances where this could become annoying. Of course, Final Fantasy XVI will also feature some epic icon clashes, and from what it seems, as Clive defeats other icons, he'll be able to unlock their abilities and use them in battle. These fights look absolutely epic and are sure to be one of the game's biggest highlights, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how they play out. From a visual perspective, Final Fantasy XVI looks nothing short of breathtaking, with some hyper-detailed environments that comprise an immersive, compelling world filled with interesting characters and terrible enemies. And for those of you who aren't too concerned about combat and want to enjoy the game's narrative, there's a story-focused mode that you'll be able to select before you start playing. Final Fantasy XVI should have a ton of lore for those of you who are hungry for that precious history and background info, so prepare yourselves for a veritable feast of interesting facts you can share with your loved ones at the least appropriate times. Final Fantasy XVI will be a limited time PS5 exclusive and release on June 22, 2023. The game will be out on PC, but not before December 31st of this year. And as for Xbox fans, you may be waiting a little longer or perhaps indefinitely, as there aren't any active plans to release the game on the Series XS console, at least not right now. So that's pretty much all of the most important information you need to know about Final Fantasy XVI. Are you excited for the game's release? And is there anything else you think fans need to be aware of before they start playing? Please let me know in the comments below. Make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so I can keep delivering top-notch gaming, VR and tech content to you on a regular basis. That's all for now. From me and the Valestians here at Metasquad, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later!